Do you ever get midway through a project and don't want to finish it? Do you find tasks in a big project that you're working on that you don't particularly want to do and it prevents you from taking on other tasks? Do you sometimes just have a malaise? You're just tired, you're not as excited about a project as you once were? Well, all of those things I feel also. Today, I want to talk to you guys about a couple mental strategies that I engage in that help me not only make it through the projects I'm working on, but ensure that I'm doing the best job I can. So stick around. Let's touch on a couple of these topics. So if you're watching this channel, it's probably no secret to you that I build truck campers, and now what we're sitting in now is my current project, my van project. And all of these projects take between like 3 to 5, maybe even 6 months to complete. That's a long time to carry your attention through a project. And what I've found in my experience is the typical cycle is in preparation for whatever that project is. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of thinking about it, a lot of planning. You get embedded in the project. You're enjoying your time. And about midway through, you kind of hit a rut sometimes. You get a little tired. And you know that you need to finish it, but the initial excitement that you had, it may not be there, or maybe it's ebbing and waning. So the big problem that can arise if you hit that malaise and you don't take on psychological tasks to get past it is failed projects, which none of us want. That's a project where we've started it and didn't finish it. I've been guilty of that, not necessarily on truck campers, but on other smaller projects. And I'm sure all of you out there, you don't have to admit it, but if you've probably had failed projects, or you've certainly known someone else who has, okay? And then the next problem, which is probably far more likely, is toward the end of the project, you tend to start letting little things go through. Basically, your quality starts to degrade, or you start removing some of the features that you previously wanted because you just want to get the project done. And I think it's important that you figure out a way to get past those. And after all, working on these projects, whether you're building your own truck camper, building out a van, or any other project, building a piece of furniture or what have you, the key thing is that you have fun doing the project. All right, so I thought about it long and hard, and I came up with 3 things that I do to help me make it through the projects and not cut corners at the end. Number 1 is consistency. Unless I'm physically unable to, for being sick or out of town or having other obligations, I make it a goal, even if I'm tired of the project, even if I don't want to, even if it's cold or hot outside or whatever it is, to do a little bit of work every single day on the project without fail. Now, we can look to other educational things, our own lives, and see that consistency is hugely important. Let's take exercise, for example. We know that it's really hard to establish that habit of working out every day. And once you do, and you say you're doing it for a month or 2, and then you stop, it sometimes it seems infinitely harder to get back on that task. And the same thing can apply to finishing a project. The malaise will pass, okay? But I think it's super important to push through those times when you don't want to work, and consistently every day, even if it's just half an hour, get out there and do some little task. Push through, so that habit of working on a day is very important. I'll be candid with you. Right now on the van project, I'm 2.5 months in. I really enjoy the project. I really like the van, and I think it's going to be great. But for whatever reason, it's not necessarily anything's wrong with the project, but I've got a little malaise. I'm kind of tired of working on it. But I'm making it through every single day. I am just doing a little bit just to kind of push through, and eventually the malaise will pass. I'll get excited about a new task, usually when I transition to some new part, and I carry on. Now, I'm going to say something that's going to sound contradictory, but bear here with me. There are maybe occasions where stepping away from a project for maybe up to a week or so is worthwhile. However, if you do that, I highly recommend that you establish and have a clear plan in your mind that I am going to come back to the project 1 week later and carry on. So for example, I was recently out of town, so obviously I'm not going to be able to work on the camper, but I used that opportunity and I said, okay, I'm going to step aside and go from there. So tip number one, if you call it that, is be consistent. And if you do decide to take a break and step aside, set a plan to come back to it at a very specific time. And most importantly, you do. All right. Strategy or tip number two, don't cut corners. Okay? I'm guilty of this, and I'm sure all of you, either personally or through experience, have seen other people do this. You're working on a big project. In your mind, you have these grand plans of whatever that is. And as you come closer to the end of that project, you start to modify those plans not because there's a practical reason, not because it's a financial reason that might prevent that, not because it's a technical difficulty you can't overcome, but because you're tired and you just want to get done. Now, a related factor to that is errors. Anybody who's done any project, particularly woodworking, and I'm sure it applies to many other kinds of crafts, you as the creator will always have little errors or accidents or faults in the construction process that are workable, meaning that they don't affect the overall structural integrity of a project, but they bother you. And they're typically things that nobody else would notice, but they bother you because you are specifically aware of them. And the same thing, however, those are acceptable. There's no way of getting past those. Those are always going to be there. But the problem comes in where if those little errors become more and more acceptable beyond what they would normally be. Kind of related to that is cutting corners. You come up and you say, okay, I'm going to build this cabinet, and your original plan was, I don't know, whatever. It's going to have some elaborate decorative door. And at the end, you say, you know what? I'm not even going to put a door on that cabinet. You're not doing it because there's a real good reason other than you're tired. And you have to avoid those situations, okay? You got to power through. Now, not saying you can't change your plan. A lot of times there might be a financial limitation. There might be a technical limitation. Or you just straight up had a different creative path at the time. Those changes are normal. They always occur. But as long as that change isn't because you just don't want to do it, carry on. My opinion is, I think if you start modifying and limiting your expectations because you're tired and just want to get done, at the end you're going to have a creative project which you find is less satisfying than one where you would have taken your time and worked it all the way through. Okay, another discussion point, which is kind of related to the last one, is don't skip over hard parts of the project or parts of the project that you don't want to do. Now, most of the time, this is not a problem because projects are linear, meaning you have to do one thing before you have to do another. So I'll give you a great example with this van. So the thing that I enjoy most and I think is most creatively satisfying is largely the carpentry tasks or building something new, okay? This van build was a unique one because the van itself, or the structure of the camper, already exists. Whereas my truck campers, I build it from scratch. So I kind of have that creative energy throughout the whole build. The van, though, I had a lot of tasks that I had to do on the outside. Peeling off graphics. I had some large maintenance things I want to do, changing diff oil, trans oil, few mechanical repairs, just things like that. Mounting solar panels. To be honest with you, I'm not critical of those tasks in the sense that I think they're bad if someone enjoys them. But for me personally, I don't find them particularly creative tasks. They're just kind of getting things done. And by extension, they're not my favorite thing to do. I could have built out the interior of this van first, the real thing that I enjoy. But what I realize is if I did that, basically did all the stuff that I wanted to do first, it would increase my risk of not finishing this project, or finishing the project but not to the caliber that I wanted, or not to the quality that I wanted. So I went ahead, bit the bullet, and got in there and did the hard tasks first. I did all the exterior stuff. That was kind of how I organized it. I did all of the maintenance stuff. I'll tell you right now, I can work on vehicles, I can do maintenance stuff, but crawling under a car and getting greasy and oily and turning a wrench, it's not by any stretch of the imagination my favorite thing to do. But it's important to get in there and do it. On the interior, right? Again, carpentry is my thing. I like, this is kind of the more exciting phase of the project. But like, there's a lot of mechanical things in here because I'm maintaining all of these Class B traditional RV systems. There's a lot of wiring I need to do. There's a lot of fixing and repairing old parts or trying to figure out how they work. Again, not the most exciting thing to me, but for you and for me in finishing a project, it's important that you recognize there may be parts of that project that you don't enjoy as much, but you still need to do them, and you certainly need to do them in the order. Okay. My final tip, and I think what is the most important tip, is being able to separate broad macro level or strategic planning to that of individualized tasks on any given day. Or if you're kind of in the military speak, you could think of creating a clear separation between strategy and tactical response. Okay, and what I mean by that is this, and I found this to be the case with myself, and I think a lot of you, if you really think about it, will probably see it's the same thing. To do a project, so let's say that we're going to build this van, which I'm working on now, you have to think big. You could think of that as strategic or a macro level thought, right? You have to plan out, well, what am I going to do? What features do I want? How is this going to lay out? What's practical? What's my budget? What do I need to buy, right? What parts do I need to have on hand? What problems could arise, okay? You have to think about that, okay? Now, whether that's something you enjoy doing or not, most people typically enjoy that because it's that daydreaming that you can engage in. That's that, you sit back and you have a whole existence in your mind. Most of us really enjoy that kind of thing, particularly if it's a creative thing. And that's important. But what I found is that if you blur the lines between that big macro level or strategic level thinking to that of individualized tasks, or you could think of it as like tactical or micro level tasks, sometimes there creates a problem. And let me explain. So right now, the part of this project I'm in is I'm just starting working on a lot of the electrical components. Okay, so this is going to have a component system in it. So I'm going to, I have my own inverter and solar charge controller, etc. I have my own battery bank. I've got solar that I have to feed into it. I've got to run wires to the van as far as where all my lights are and charging ports, etc. From a strategic or macro level, I think about all those things, right? I've got to do this. I've got to do that. Do I have the wires on hand? Do I have the connectors? Do I have this part? Is that bound in place? That's important. Now, but what I find for me is, so here I am, on a Tuesday afternoon, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to go through and start doing some of those tasks. If I start that with thinking about everything that I have to do, each individual task becomes a real bear because I'm not thinking about what I'm doing, but I'm thinking about where I want to go. Okay? There's a time and place for thinking about where you want to go and planning it, but I think it has to be a different time and place than when you're actually doing the work by itself. What I found is the night before, I'll sit back, whether I'm going to bed or I'm sitting in my massage chair, and I'll visualize where I'm at in the project and what I need to do. And then I'll kind of break it up into individual tasks for the next day. The next day, I'll come in. So like today, I need to plumb the solar panel wires through. I need to feed them in a safe manner through the vehicle and get them to the intersection point of where the solar charge controller is going to be. And I need to do some other work in terms of mounting the solar charge controller, etc. But what I'll do is I'll plan that out the night before, and then the day of, I'll just do one task at a time and only think about and only focus on that task at a time. And what I find is that makes the process so much more enjoyable. You do a better job because you're focusing on that, and it doesn't become stressful. If you start a project and all you could think about is all of the things that you need to do, it turns those individual tasks into burdens. So just to recap, it's absolutely important when you're planning your project to look at it from a strategic or macro level, right? You got to think about all the stuff you need to buy, what you need to do, etc. But when it comes to doing the work, set aside individualized tasks and enjoy those tasks in the time and the moment that you're doing. I guarantee you, you'll do a better job, and most importantly, you'll enjoy it more. All right, guys? I hope these little tips are helpful. As I always say, this is my opinion. These are my thoughts. I think I've been pretty successful at doing big projects, doing a good job and getting them done and not letting them turn into failed projects. But take these little tips. I would love if you guys left some comments on maybe strategies I didn't mention that you engage in, or maybe some reinforcement of something that worked or did not work. But take this as one part of a larger whole. All right, guys? I love being creative. This is what these builds are all about. I know that's the case with a lot of you guys out there, and best of luck in your builds. I'll see you guys next time.